Hi. Oh, almost. Need to drink like something warm before I start talking with the frog in my throat. I'm Rob Bowron with Sharp College Football. I'm the econometrician behind Bowron, an advanced stat system for college football. And we're here to talk about oh God, there's so many good games this Saturday. I'm pumped. This is a great week for college football. If you're tuning into this, you undoubtedly already know that. Because I mean, we're not exactly in every household in America. So, like I said, there's some great games this week. One of the things that I think is important about this week in particular for college football is we're likely to see some separation, right? Like teams. I mean, we've got the game between Oregon and Washington. Somebody's coming out of there. Seattle, of course, with a loss. That doesn't put you necessarily out of the title picture, but it definitely takes away one of your mulligans that you're going to have from making the playoff. We've also got what is essentially an elimination game between UCLA and Oregon State. Notre Dame is playing a USC, and Notre Dame, of course, already has 2 losses, so is likely out of the playoff picture. But USC has been, how shall we put it? Skating on pretty thin ice the last couple weeks against pretty mediocre competition. The back half of their schedule loads up significantly, and it starts this week. We also have, of course, Texas A&M and Tennessee. Tennessee is a team that, despite not looking great at points this season or large parts of this season, certainly still in contention up into perhaps when they play Georgia out there. And North Carolina is a team that is suddenly resurgent. The defense has taken a huge step forward under Gene Chizik and in year 2, which I certainly owe a mea culpa on. I didn't think that hire was going to work out. I was very surprised by it, and it did not work out in year 1, but it's absolutely come together in year 2 for them. And it looks like a terrific hire for Mac Brown. Not to mention Chip Lindsey has really kept the offense going for them as well. I mean, it helps to have Drake May, of course, but not missing a beat is critical. And the race too for, right now there, it certainly does look like the top group of 5 team is likely to come out of the Mountain West. And we have another great matchup once again involving Wyoming in the Mountain West this week. So there's some really exciting matchups. If this is your first time tuning in, we're going to run through 6 games of the coming college football weekend. We're going to run through them from an advanced stats perspective. We're going to use stats from Bowron, a system that I designed. It's built on data that's provided by the same folks that provide data to the College Football Playoff Committee. And then we do some very advanced, very sophisticated, I'm blowing it out of proportion. But anyway, it's not simple math done in Excel. Let's put it that way. Not that there's anything wrong with it if you're doing math in Excel, but more power to you, my friends. I'd go out of my mind. Anyway, everything you see today is going to be controlling for at least opponent, field position, and tempo. So you're not going to hear us talk about anything like points per game, yards per game, anything like that. Those are not stat. Those are counting stats. we're going to talk about stats that are at least trying to control for the important things that you need to control for in college football, because it's not the NFL. It's not terribly heterogeneous. I mean, there's, even in the NFL, you have good teams and bad teams. In college football, the gap between good teams and bad teams can be quite large. The gap between very, very good teams in college football in a normal year and even good teams in college football can be quite large. This year's fun though, of course, because nobody's really emerged as a real massive heavyweight. It feels like 2016, 2015 college football again, before, the real behemoths started putting massive distance between them and the rest of the field. And sometimes there were as many as 4 teams, like 2019, that put major distance between them and the rest of college football. And sometimes last year it's just Georgia. I mean, Georgia was just a head and shoulders above everybody else out there playing. This year, nobody's really pulled away from the pack. There's some teams that there's a little bit of a gap, but it's not much, and there's quite a few teams in the pack. That's going to make for a fun college football season, because even if the gap between like the teams that are a little bit ahead, they're only about a touchdown ahead of the teams that would be chasing them that are not sort of in that upper echelon. And that's doable. I mean, you turn them over once in a game, you finish +1 on turnovers, you might win that game. That's a different story than we've had the last couple seasons. So I'm really excited for that. I try to spend, and I have a timer, to try to hold myself to some level of accountability. I occasionally manage to hold myself to that level of accountability of 5 minutes per game in the preview. We'll see if we can do it. Anyway, let's go ahead and hop in. I'm really pumped for the games this week. Of course, the headline matchup, Oregon's at Washington, number 3 at number 7. I mean, this rivalry is all kinds of bitter all the time anyway. These teams don't often meet when they're both highly ranked. It's been a little bit of one or the other. Over the past 20 years or so. But now they both come in very much rolling. Oregon comes in, Dan Lanning's your head coach, Kalen DeBoer's your head coach for Washington. The Oregon offense has been fantastic. They're averaging on a pure non-controlled, like this is a pure points per drive, no controls in here. Over 4 points per drive. That's remarkable. I don't expect that to hold up as their schedule toughens up a bit. But Will Stein, who's their new offensive coordinator, has done a terrific job coming in and taking over. Now, for Kenny Dillingham, who did a very good job last year too. They're number 1 overall in beta rank right now offensively, number 2 overall in drive efficiency. They do an excellent job being able to sustain drives to put up points. For explosive drives, they are able to put up big plays at a really high clip, number 4 overall there. Number 15 in play efficiency. This is the least important of the core 4 beta rank metrics. But this is your yards per play outside of explosives. And they do a decent job here. It's not, like I said, it's not the most critical one of them. The other ones certainly count for more. Negative drives, number 9 overall. They do a good job avoiding 3 and outs, avoiding turnovers. And they don't have a really big run pass split. Number 7 overall in effective rush, number 6 in effective pass. This is a team that's fairly balanced. They do a really good job with that. Bo Nix is your quarterback here. He's completing 80.4% of his passes up to this point at 9.0 per. Just a remarkable job thus far. We only have 4 games for Oregon against FBS competition up to this point. This is going to be their stiffest test that they've really had, up to this point. But this Washington defense under William Inge as your defensive play caller, they've made progress off of where they were last season. They were a really bad Power 5 defense last season, in particular against the pass. They're up from last year. I think they were around 66 overall, up to 45. That is improvement, and we do want to call that out. It is, however, not necessarily the kind of improvement you're maybe hoping for if you're a Washington fan. I would have liked to have seen them, given the overall talent level they have, to be a little bit higher than this year with the bounce back. There's still plenty of football left to be played. If they come in and have a really good game against Oregon, they're certainly going to gain ground here on their overall ranking. Relatively speaking, they do an okay job preventing teams putting together long drives to put up points. You certainly saw them in recent weeks, like in their last game 2 weeks ago in Arizona. Arizona was certainly able to put drives together against them. 44 overall in explosive drives. They are susceptible to giving up big plays. Number 64 overall in negative drives, not really forcing enough 3 and outs, not really forcing enough turnovers. They could certainly do with a little more help from their pass rush in this place as well. Number 45 in effective rush. They're a little better against the run than they are against the pass. That might be a little bit to their advantage. Oregon certainly does still like to run the football, though Oregon does have some very talented wide receivers this time around as well. You flip it around, and of course, it's the number 2 offense in Beta rank. This Washington offense, of course, is fantastic under Ryan Grubb. Number 13 overall in drive efficiency. Now, this is not necessarily their forte. I will say in their last game that we did see them against Arizona. Arizona came in with a game plan to take away big plays. They forced Penix to take the checkdowns, and he absolutely did, and hit them for big yards. Right? I mean, that was sort of the trade-off that Arizona made. Like they gave up a lot of yak in that game. But I do expect that Washington can put together drives and put up points. They're just not doing it at the level that other teams are right now. They're an incredibly explosive offense, number 2 overall in explosive drives. They're very good at play efficiency outside of explosive, still putting up a consistent yards per play. And they do a fantastic job avoiding 3 and outs and avoiding turnovers. That's not necessarily from Penix scrambling. He does a really, really good job getting the ball out before the pressure gets to him. They have a huge run pass split, 111 in effective rush, number 1 in effective pass. They lean into the passing game. I mean, I think people get really too caught up in like Washington doesn't have an effective running game or something like that. If this is like 1930s He-Man football and other stupid things that people say. Washington is going to elect to throw the football around, and they're incredible at it. They have 3 really good wide receivers in Michael Penix. Penix himself is completing 74.7% of his passes, 11.2 per. Now, this Oregon defense is also taking a step forward, about the same level that Washington did. Oregon was in the 40s last year. They're up into the lower 20s right now. Number 21 overall in Beta rank. Tosh Lapoy, your defensive play caller here. Now, what they struggle with right now is drive efficiency. They've given up longer drives and given up more points per drive than you would have expected given some of their other underlying metrics. They just struggle to get off the field a little bit here. Number 17 overall in explosive drives. This is a positive number for them coming into this game. They're going to need to be able to slow down big plays, and you might see Oregon try to copy what Arizona did a little bit. Of course, they have better personnel than Arizona does. Might be able to get to Penix a little bit with the pass rush. 21 in play efficiency. They do a good job, relatively speaking, limiting the yards per play outside of explosives. 24 in negative drives. You'd like to see them pick some of these up. The one to really keep an eye on this game is this drive efficiency number. Teams have been able to put together drives on them when they do put up points. 36 in effective rush, 23 in effective pass. You definitely want to be a little bit better against the run against the pass than the run here. But that 23 overall in effective pass isn't great. And it's going to be interesting to see. Washington is going to have an advantage throwing the football in this game. This one's an interesting one. The naive spread and the win probability favor Oregon. Oregon 60% win probability and about 2.88 points as a favorite. But that is not taking it. That is a pure teams that are as good as Oregon versus teams that are as good as Washington. That is a pure team overall count. The actual predicted points for the game, which takes into account the specific factors that you see here, has it differently. Washington 39.15 points, Oregon 36.15 points. Some of that, of course, is Washington is at home. Some of it is that Washington is just such a dominant passing attack that they're going to likely put up points against Oregon. I'm really interested to see this. This just feels like a little bit of a toss-up to me. Should be a lot of fun. Anybody finishes minus, on the negative side in turnovers is probably not walking out with a W. Or if they do, then they've really played really well. I didn't make my 5 minutes on that one. UCLA goes to Oregon State. Chip Kelly against Jonathan Smith is your head coach for the Oregon State Beavers. This should be a really fun matchup. UCLA comes in with the number 21 overall offense. They've fallen off a bit from where they were last year. In particular, they're really struggling to throw the football around. Chip Kelly, of course, is your play caller. They're also struggling a little bit to run the football, though they do run the football better than they are throwing it by a long shot. they struggle, I guess we should say, relative to what we expect from UCLA under Chip Kelly. They're number 24 overall in drive efficiency. They do a decent job being able to put together long drives to put up points. 21 overall in explosive drives. They are a fairly explosive offense. That's something to keep an eye on here. Oregon State's really struggling, as you can see if you're peeking ahead over there, really struggling to contain the big plays. Number 11 overall in play efficiency. While they are a little less explosive, they do a good job putting up the yards per play outside of explosive. Something to keep an eye on, though: too many 3-and-outs, too many turnovers. Dante Moore is a big part of some of that. They're number 9 in effective rush versus number 36 in effective pass. They do have a decent run pass split here. Dante Moore is completing, and this is a horrendous number, 53.1% of his passes, and 8.8 per. 51 point, that is 53% of your passes is a bonkers number in modern college football. The sort of Mendoza line for quarterbacks these days is somewhere around 63% completing your passes in a modern college offense. Being down that low tells you a lot of things about killing drives, as well as getting 3-and-outs. And he has been a little interception prone. Now, the Oregon State defense defense under Trent Bray is taking a step back off of where they were last season. Last season they had a top 10 unit. They're currently sitting number 26 overall, which is kind of more of a middle of the road-ish Power 5 defense. But they do a really good job right now in drive efficiency. They find ways to get off the field and avoid giving up points. But as I talked about, they are susceptible to giving up big plays. Number 41 overall in explosive drives. That's something to keep an eye on here. Their play efficiency, their yards per play outside of explosives isn't great, and they're not forcing nearly enough 3-and-outs or enough turnovers. Number 96 overall in negative drives. Basically, like, what they've been able to do well up to this point is use the field to their advantage and find ways to get off the field without giving up points. That's not always going to work for you. It does require some good coaching and execution to be able to pull that off. It is a little bit of a high wire act. Now, they are, to their benefit, they are a little better against the run than they are against the pass. Number 18 overall in effective rush versus number 44 overall in effective pass. But they did just come off getting hammered a little bit by Cal in the run game. It's going to be something to keep an eye on here, whether UCLA is able to run the football effectively and take pressure off of Dante Moore. Flip it around. Brian Lindgren's your play caller for Oregon State. Danton Lynn has done an amazing job with his UCLA defense thus far. Anyway, this Oregon State offense has taken a step forward with DJU as your quarterback. Number 14 overall in drive efficiency. They're doing a pretty good job of sustaining drives, putting up points. Number 7 overall in explosive drives. This is kind of a fun one for them. The Beavs don't necessarily have any prototypical wide receivers that are big play guys, but they have some smaller guys that can get out there and get open. And they do find ways to get the balls to the tight end as well. Of course, they have good running backs and a very good offensive line. Number 14 overall in play efficiency. They do a good job outside of explosives, putting up yards per play. Their negative drives is good too, avoiding 3-and-outs and avoiding turnovers for the most part. They still do have a pretty significant run pass play, which I think you'd expect given that Jim Halchek's your offensive line coach and you have the running backs that you do. Number 5 in effective rush versus number 22 in effective pass. DJU is at 60.5% completion percentage, 8.6 per. Look, he doesn't look like the 5-star that we all thought he was going to turn out to be, but he certainly looks improved in this offense. And while he will make some dumb throws every game, he also makes some throws every game that you can just see the raw physical tools that he has that are just phenomenal, of course. And he's opened up this offense in ways that they weren't able to last year. UCLA's defense is number 1 overall, currently in beta rank. Like I said, they're just doing a fantastic job up to this point. This is going to be an interesting test for them against a really well-coached team. They're doing an excellent job in drive efficiency, finding ways to get off the field and avoid giving up points. But they also are able to contain explosive drives. Number 4 overall in play efficiency. They've done a good job limiting yards per play outside of explosives. 10 at negative drives. This is their worst number-ish, but they still do a pretty good job forcing 3-and-outs, forcing turnovers. Number 3 in effective rush, 3 in effective pass, no big run pass split. They did a really good job against Utah, shutting down their run game. Utah's offensive line might not be great. But they also, my concern coming into the season was them defending the pass. They absolutely shut down and made Cam Ward look like last year's Cam Ward last week. That was a big answer for me about how this defense might look. This is going to be an interesting one. My guess is they're going to give up more rushing yards than you might expect in this game, given that they're ranked number 1 overall and that they're number 3 in effective rush. But I think that's just the fact that Oregon State has such a good running game. Anyway, we've got this as a true toss-up in the naive spread and the win probability. 50% win probability, 0.0 in the actual naive spread. However, in the predicted score, we've got Oregon State 30.54 to 26.66 for UCLA. Just expecting that Dante Moore is going to have a bit of a rough game here, and that Oregon State's going to be able to run the football. This is an interesting one. So Notre Dame, USC is going to Notre Dame in what should be cold and rainy in South Bend. Just the weather you want if you're USC. Notre Dame, of course, is coached by Marcus Freeman. Lincoln Riley is your head coach at USC. Now, the Notre Dame offense is coached by Jared Parker, and they're okay. They had a really bad week last week against Louisville, a really, really bad week last week against Louisville. Now, this USC defense under Alex Grinch has been much maligned as well, and Lincoln Riley came to their defense this week. I basically is saying it was all a media narrative that they weren't good. I don't know. Anyway, this Notre Dame offense is number 23 overall in beta rank. That's a little bit of an improvement over where they were last season under Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees isn't really a great offensive coordinator either. 17 overall in drive efficiency. They're doing a decent job, and this is a positive for the coordinator. Being able to put together long drives. It also is a positive for the team, being able to execute well. Now they're at number 26 overall in explosive drives. They're not great at putting up big plays here. 23 in play efficiency. Outside of explosives, they're doing a decent job here. Too many 3 and outs, too many turnovers. Number 49 overall in negative drives. This is the number that's probably holding them back the most. They need to clean this up. They need to get better at avoiding 3 and outs, at avoiding turnovers. 34 in effective rush, 21 in effective pass. They don't have the world's greatest wide receivers, and I mean, given that they have Audric Estime, you might have been expecting that this would be the other way around. But they also have Sam Hartman. He's a really good quarterback, and even though they don't have the world's greatest wide receivers, they do throw it more than you might expect here in order to get things done. Sam Hartman's completing 64.5% of his passes, 9.4 per. Those are pretty darn good numbers, I think, given who his OC is and who his wide receivers are. Now he does have a good offensive line. This USC defense struggling, absolutely struggling. This is an improvement over where they were last year, just like Oregon and Washington, about 20 spots off of where they were last year, but they've definitely been trending in the wrong direction. They had a really rough game. They've had 3 weeks of rough games. Let's not kid ourselves. They had a rough game against Arizona State, followed by a rough game against Colorado, followed by a rough game against Arizona. Now, the level of competition probably stepping up a little bit here, as you go up there. Still not great. 78 overall in beta rank. That's a very bad Power 5 defense. 70 in drive efficiency. You can absolutely put together long drives to put up points against this USC defense. They're at number 84 overall in explosive drives. They give up a lot of big plays. 92 in play efficiency. They're at 88 in negative drives, not forcing nearly enough 3 and outs or turnovers. They don't have a really big run pass split, but they're not great at either of them. Arizona was able to run both power and some sweeps to the outside and gain considerable yards running the football, as well as letting their backup quarterback throw all over USC as well, to the tune of 5 touchdowns. They flip it around though. This USC offense, they're really interesting. Anyway, Lincoln Riley's your play caller here. Of course, Caleb Williams is the quarterback. Number 5 overall in beta rank right now. They're struggling a little bit with drive efficiency. 18 overall here. It's struggling to be able to sustain drives, put them together to be able to put up points. They're very good, however, still at big plays. Number 3 overall in explosive drives. Outside of explosives, their play efficiency is number 6, and Williams is just phenomenal at avoiding sacks, at avoiding turnovers. Number 3 overall on negative drives. They don't have much of a running game to support him. I think Marshawn Lloyd is good, but I think the USC offensive line is still struggling a little bit. They're at number 3 overall in effective pass. I actually do want to call out, I don't think they have the world's greatest set of wide receivers in there right now, and I do think that like this has become more of the Caleb Williams show than they even were last season. Now Caleb Williams is absolutely phenomenal, but it's a lot to ask him. I mean, he's basically had to put USC on his back the last couple of weeks. This Notre Dame defense is pretty good, and they've improved over where they were last season considerably. Al Golden's your defensive coordinator here at number 14 overall. Now they are struggling a little bit, relatively speaking, at drive efficiency, finding ways to get off the field and avoid giving up points. But they are doing a good job limiting big plays. Number 15 overall in explosive drives. Number 17 overall in play efficiency. 17 at negative drives. They do a decent job forcing 3 and outs and forcing turnovers. They do have a bit of a run pass split. They're at number 11 overall in effective pass. Number 32 in effective rush. They're a little more vulnerable against the run than they are against the pass. That said, I'm not sure this USC offensive line is necessarily the bunch of guys to exploit that. It'll be interesting to see. It might have to be the Caleb Williams show again. He's completing 71.7% of his passes again and 10.9 per. We've got this with Notre Dame as a 62% win probability, 4 points in the naive spread, which again is just the total team against the total team number. But we've got this as a very close game in the predicted score. Notre Dame 34.85, USC 33.58. The Elimination Bowl. I mean, I don't know that necessarily like the Elimination Bowl. I don't know that either of these teams are really quite seriously in playoff contention, but they're not quite out of it. Well, maybe, yeah, they are. Maybe A&M is. Tennessee might not be. Josh Heupel's your head coach for Tennessee. Jimbo Fisher's your head coach for A&M. Now, this Josh Heupel coached offense as well is sitting at number 11 overall in beta rank. They've taken a big step back off of where they were last year. Both they and Georgia got over 2 in beta rank in their overall score last season. They're not really anywhere near that right now. They've definitely taken a big step back with Joe Milton at quarterback. Now they are, and I mean, it's sort of an interesting thing. Like they are a fairly efficient offense at being able to put together drives to put up points. They're struggling, and this is interesting because I mean, of course, Milton has the absolute cannon of an arm, but they're struggling a little bit to put up big plays. Heupel runs a version of the Briles offense that you feel like is designed to be able to put up big plays, but sitting at 16 overall here, do a good job at their play efficiency. Being able to, outside of explosives, put up a decent yards per play. 18 though in negative drives. They need to avoid 3 and outs and avoid turnovers. Number 3 in effective rush. In this sense, they do look a little bit more like the conventional Briles offense than you would have expected under Heupel, his version tends to throw it a bit more. But he is and will adapt to the personnel as needed, which is a credit to him as an offensive mind. Number 34 overall in effective pass. That's where they're like the really big difference from last year is Heupel. Heupel's version with the quarterback that can do it. They will absolutely throw it. Milton's at 63.1% completion percentage, 7.3 per. That's a little bit of a tell. The completion percentage isn't bad, but the 7.3 per is telling you that they're not getting the ball down the field as much as you would have expected, and that hurts them a little bit. This defense in Texas A&M under DJ Durkin, he's not a great defensive coordinator. I don't know really why he got this job after Mike Elko. They're struggling at drive efficiency in particular. You can put together long drives to put up points against this A&M defense, and people have. You can put up big plays as well, 26 overall. That's a better number than their drive efficiency, but that still tells you that you are able to put up and find big plays against them. That's sort of a middle of the Power 5-ish, maybe on the sunny side, a middle of the Power 5 number. Now, they do a good job at play efficiency outside of explosive and limiting their yards per play, and the number that's sort of holding them up altogether is forcing 3 and outs points and forcing turnovers, but they have a big run pass split. That's going to be interesting to see here against this Tennessee offense in particular, which does like to run the football a little bit. They're at 7 in effective rush versus 35 in effective pass. They're going to hope to be able to limit Tennessee's run game and force them into throwing the football a little bit, although we'll see because they're not necessarily great at defending the pass either. You flip it around, Bobby Petrino is your new offensive coordinator for Texas A&M, and they've had some injuries. They have taken a bit of a step forward. This is still, for given how much money they're spending on the staff and how much money they have spent on this roster, not necessarily the results that they were probably hoping for. They're struggling to be able to sustain drives and put up points, 56 overall. Some of that's play calling, some of that's execution. 22 overall in explosive drives, doing a decent job being able to put up big plays here. Now, outside of the explosives, they don't have a great yards per play, number 46 overall there. 19 in negative drives. They do a decent job avoiding 3 and outs, avoiding turnovers. It's really their best number. Now, they have a huge run pass split here. Number 61 in effective rush, number 19 in effective pass. Max Johnson has stepped in and been pretty good filling in for the injured Connor Wegman. He's not great, but he's pretty good. 60.7% completion percentage this year, 8.0 per. Now, this Tennessee defense under Tim Banks, they're one of those interesting ones to me. I expect these numbers to level out a little bit. Like right now, they've given up some points on drives. Like that's just the lay of the land for them. Their underlying yards per play metrics, which are the explosives, the play efficiency, the negative drives, those are a lot better. But teams have found ways to still be able to put together drives and put up points against them, and that's a problem. 109 in play efficiency, that's really bad. They're number 6 though overall though, in being able to limit big plays, and that's a positive number for them in particular. That's going to be something to keep an eye on here because that's what A&M has been relying on a little bit. Number 9 in play efficiency. Number 22 overall in negative drives. They could certainly stand to force more 3 and outs and more turnovers. No big run pass split. That's going to be kind of a fun one to keep an eye on. Like what's interesting, I think, is both of these defenses match up strength on strength ish for what these offenses do. And you might have to see who's able to sort of lean on what they don't do as well in order to get points here. We've got this one at Tennessee with a 74% win probability at home. It's about 7.5 points. However, if you bake into this and you flip it around and you look at the predicted score out of the prediction model that takes into account everything that you see here, we have A&M as a slight favorite, 29 points for A&M to 26.55 for Tennessee. Again, a lot of it has to do with what A&M's particularly good at versus what Tennessee is particularly good at. Here it should be a really interesting game. Oh, hold on. There we go. This is a good game in the ACC. North Carolina sits at number 14 overall right now, and maybe even has a shot to improve on that number and sneak into the top 10 as the season goes on. This Miami team, of course, is coming off a stunningly stupid loss against Georgia Tech. Now, Mario Cristobal is your head coach at Miami. Mac Brown's your head coach at North Carolina. This North Carolina offense is number 8 overall. This is an improvement over where they were last season. Chip Lindsey's done a terrific job taking over for Phil Longo. They're at number 12 overall in drive efficiency. They do a good job sustaining drives to be able to put up points. And that's a bit of a departure from where they were with Longo, who is definitely more of a home run type hitter. Like to swing for the fences, like tend to have a really big explosive number and be a less efficient offense. They still are an explosive offense, number 11 overall in explosive drives. 24 in play efficiency. Outside of explosives, they're doing an okay job on their yards per play. Again, this is the least important metric. Number 6 overall in negative drives. They do a good job, a really good job, and a lot of this is on Drake May, avoiding 3 and outs and avoiding turnovers. Now they do have a decent run pass split. Number 28 in effective rush versus 28 in effective rush versus number 8 in effective pass. Now, Miami's defense comes in at number 25 overall. That's all right. Now, they did lose their defensive coordinator, Kevin Steele, to Alabama. They've got Lance Guidry is your defensive coordinator for Miami. Now, they are struggling a little bit with drive efficiency, finding ways to get off the field and avoid giving up points. They're better at containing big plays, number 22 overall here. Their play efficiency is okay at number 25. Now, negative drives, you're going to have to force something. You need North Carolina to make some mistakes here. Number 31 overall isn't necessarily a big point in your favor. And this is a bad one. Their run pass splits flipped around the wrong direction. They're number 14 at defending the run, but 49 in effective pass against Drake May is probably the recipe for an unfortunate afternoon. Flip it around. This Miami offense, ooh, buddy, they're struggling again. Now, they did need to make an offensive coordinator change after last season. Josh Gaddis was simply not very good. I should say Drake May, 72.1% completion percentage, 9.1 per. Shannon Dawson's your offensive coordinator for Miami. They haven't really improved. Gaddis was really bad last season, but this is not that great of an offense altogether either. Number 49 overall in drive efficiency, struggling to put together long drives to be able to put up points. 55 in explosive drives. They're not putting up big plays either. 57 in play efficiency. Their yards per play outside of explosives isn't great. The one thing that they do pretty well is negative drives. They avoid 3 and outs. They avoid turnovers. They have a decent run pass split, but they're not great at running the football. 51 overall in effective rush versus 39 in effective pass. I guess you could say I'm still shocked. Because Cristobal, I will say this, Cristobal, for the most part, he's had some misses in his hires, and Gaddis was a miss, but he has a good, I've seen the lists. I've talked to people around the Oregon program when he was there, and he's generally made some good hires, and he has good process and often interviews good people and interesting people for his coordinator jobs, but he's really striking out on this Miami offense, and it could be bad for him. Now, speaking of hires, so Gene Chizik is your defensive coordinator for North Carolina. I'll mea culpa this. I didn't think it was going to work. It definitely wasn't working last year. It's definitely come around in year number 2. Now, they are up to being a middle-of-the-road Power 5 defense, but that's a huge improvement over where they've been in the entirety of Mac Brown's tenure up to this point. They're number 39 in drive efficiency. You can put together some drives to put up points against them, but they are going to just about equally find ways to get off the field. 43 in explosive drives. They do a decent job avoiding giving up big plays. 24 in play efficiency. This is their best metric, though it is the least important of the core 4 beta rank metrics. The one thing that they could definitely improve on is their negative drives, forcing more 3 and outs, more turnovers. Now, they have a decent run pass split, 51 in effective rush versus 32 in effective pass. That's actually in their favor in this game because Miami does lean on throwing the ball a little bit more. Tyler Van Dyke's your quarterback, I should say, for Miami. He's at 72.6% completion percentage, 9.9 per. That's pretty good. You'd expect a better offense. We've got this with North Carolina at home with an 85% win probability, 13.34 in the naive spread. Just at 9 points, though, 33.34, and the predicted score to 24.36 for North Carolina. I grew up in Casper, Wyoming. I went to high school there and everything. I swear I'm not just picking games that the Cowboys are in. Anyway, these are two of the best over the last decade coaches in the group of 5. Troy Calhoun's your head coach for Air Force. Craig Bowles, your head coach for the University of Wyoming. The UW, as it were. Now, Air Force, they have a terrific offense this season. Mike Deason's your offensive play caller for them. They're at number 12 overall in beta rank, which is just a phenomenal number for any group of 5 team. Number 1 in drive efficiency. Now, drive efficiency, you usually find service academies scoring well here. They are the teams that can put together long drives that aren't going to have a lot of big plays and put up points. So number 1 overall in drive efficiency here. They do a very good job stringing together yards per play to keep the chains moving and put points on the board. But they're not a terribly explosive offense. 101 in explosive drives. They're at number 82 overall in play efficiency. So outside of explosives, they're not putting up a tremendous yards per play, but it's enough. And number 8 overall in negative drives. They do just a terrific job avoiding 3 and outs and avoiding turnovers. They have an enormous run pass split. Number 1 overall in effective rush, number 129 in effective pass. You absolutely know what you have to do to stop them here. Zach Larriere is your quarterback, 73.7% completion percentage, 21.6 per. He's not throwing it very often though, and he's throwing it in incredibly advantageous spots when they let him throw it. He's got 362 rush yards on the season as well, which is probably the most important part that he adds to the offense. Now, this Wyoming defense is pretty good for a group of 5 defense, number 54 overall, and they have definitely taken advantage of and forced teams to make some mistakes, including App State and Fresno State in their games that they've won in Laramie. Now, this game, of course, is on the road in Colorado Springs. Both these teams play at altitude, so these are the 2 highest stadiums in FBS football. So there's nobody's going to be wheezing out there. Now, Jay Sawvell is your defensive coordinator for Wyoming. 64 overall in drive efficiency. They do a decent job forcing 3 and out or finding ways to get off the field and avoiding giving up points. 47 overall in explosive drives. This is a pretty good number for them. They find ways to avoid giving up big plays. Their play efficiency is pretty good at 50 overall. They do limit the yards per play outside of explosives. And the negative drives, this is something they could potentially improve on a little bit. Force more 3 and outs, force more turnovers. Now, they are better against the pass than they are against the run. Something to keep an eye on here, of course, when you're playing Air Force. I apologize. I've been fighting the yawns this entire time. I need to get some sleep at some point. Anyway. Should be this should be a really fun matchup. Wyoming under Bull in general, but in particular this year has found ways to make it very difficult for whomever they're playing just to do whatever that they plan to do. Now, offensively, Wyoming under Bull hasn't been fantastic. Now they're a little bit better, although still not a great. This isn't a bad Power 5 deep offensive number at number 91 overall. You could say sort of like maybe middle of the road-ish offensively within the Power 5 or within the group of 5. Number 96 overall in drive efficiency. They do a decent job sustaining long drives to put up points. They're at number 92 in explosive drives. Now they do a decent job putting up big plays. Now their play efficiency is really good. Outside of explosives, they do find ways to put up yards per play. And they do an okay job avoiding 3 and outs and avoiding turnovers. Now they have a good run pass split, number 38 overall in effective rush versus 115 in effective pass. Andrew Peasley is your quarterback here. He's got a 59% completion percentage, 6.5 per. I really should have looked up, and I apologize. Let me see if I can find it quickly here, because he also runs the football, and I should have, just like I did for the Air Force quarterback, told you what his rushing stats are. Of course, it's just going to take forever to load as we're doing this. There we go. Andrew Peasley, let's do rushing. He's got 155 yards on the ground. He's averaging 4 yards per carry. Defensively, Air Force, this is a good group of 5 defense. This is a very good Service Academy defense in particular. Now you can put together long drives against them, 90 overall in drive efficiency. That'll be something to keep an eye on, whether Wyoming's able to sustain drives here in this game. 32 in explosive drives. They do a very good job for a Service Academy, in particular, limiting big plays. You don't always have the fleetest of foot in the defensive backfield if you're a Service Academy. 36 overall in play efficiency. They do a good job limiting the yards per play outside of explosives. That'll be a good thing to keep an eye on here in this matchup. And they don't force a ton of 3 and outs or turnovers. Number 74 overall in negative drives. Now they are better against the run than they are against the pass, but it's not overwhelming here. Brian Knorr is your defensive coordinator for Air Force here. He's bounced around a little bit at the Service Academies. He's been at Navy, I believe, before this. Tim Polsek is your offensive coordinator for Wyoming. We've got this. Air Force is this is an interesting one. So Vegas has this as a closer game, although Air Force, I believe, is favored by 7 or 8. In the naive spread, Air Force is a 91% win probability and 17.67. Teams that are rating as good as Air Force versus teams that are rating as good as Wyoming win by a lot, usually. However, in the predicted points, this is a lot closer, 28.45 to 25.29. This could be a close game. I'm really excited for this one. I mean, the Fresno State was supposed to also, in the model. Now we are, of course, still fairly early in some of the data. Be better than Wyoming, and Wyoming went out and beat them. Though I think Vegas would probably still have maybe Fresno State as the favorite if they played again. Wyoming find ways to make you do things that you wish hadn't happened. Anyway, I'm really excited for this week of college football. We've got the headline matchup, of course, but underneath that, we also have some great matchups as well. The Oregon and Washington game should be frickin-tastic if you like offensive football, and I don't know why you wouldn't. But the defenses are good enough to make things interesting, but not good enough to usually in this game to avoid giving up a bunch of points. Let's hope both quarterbacks stay healthy the entire game, and we just get to watch a bunch of fireworks in that game. But also keep an eye on, because the Pac-12 is going to be tough all season. UCLA gets by Oregon State. Their schedule is going to lighten up significantly, and they might be able to go on and be a little bit of a dark horse run if they can get by the Beavs. Oregon State, of course, has the chance to play spoiler for nearly everyone still ahead of them. I think they don't play USC this season, which is a bummer. And then, Air Force Wyoming should also be a really fun game. Keep an eye on the game on South Bend, because USC, which has been on a bit of a high wire and a little you could maybe argue dancing a little close to the fire the past couple of weeks. The schedule is going to get significantly harder. USC, if they win out, they'll deserve it, because they'll play a tough schedule down the back half. But they could easily drop 3 or 4 games that could start this week. Anyway, I'm really, really excited for this. We also have Penn State, Ohio State next week too. All right, let's finish this up. Anyway, I'm Rob Bowron, the econometrician behind BetaRank. You can find all the stats you saw and a whole lot more at sharpcollegefootball.com. You can find me at BetaRankFB or at Sharp College Football. We also have a Pac-12 podcast for the time being at 12 Pack Radio. You can find all the back episodes of that at sharpcollegefootball.com/12 Pack Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.